Hello everybody, I'm RS Virdi 72 batch. Welcome all Sams and Simis who have joined us live today on this 25th of August 2024 at 11 hours Indian Standard Time for this third virtual lounge session. To introduce the speaker for today, Mr. A K Upadhyay, 70 batch. He then moved over to the Indian Administrative Service of the 75 batch and was allotted the Bihar cadre. After a number of postings on various postings in Bihar, he moved over to the central government, where he was posted in the President's Secretariat, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Agriculture, and then Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. When he was Secretary, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, he was also holding charge of the post of chairman of the NHAI, National Highway Authority of India. His today's talk will be on the development of highways in India and how the project funding, the project execution, the contract management, and dispute resolution has evolved over time, and how it has helped take this sector of highway development in India to its present level on an upward trajectory. So over to you, Mr. A K Upadhyay.
Thank you, Virdi, and thank you, Mr. Singh, President. I have to first thank all of you for logging in and for your introduction. And I have to also thank my two previous speakers, Mr. Anand and Mr. Sunil Bajpayee. I can see both of them here. And when my friend Neeraj Kumar first contacted me and asked me whether I would like to speak on this lounge session, I was a little hesitant, precisely for the reason that right after passing out from Jamalpur, my experience has been in a totally different sector. But saying straight no would have been a little rude. So I told him that even if I speak, I won't be able to make a structured presentation. It will be open-ended talk, this and that. Then I heard the first two speakers, Mr. Anand and Mr. Bajpayee. I was highly impressed. So I was more overawed. But I am also quite proud to belong to this elite group. I am very happy that I belong to this elite group. And it's so good to see so many dear friends and so many friends after so many years whom I can know them very closely, but I can't recognize their faces because I'm meeting up for the first time after Jamalpur. So Neeraj is a man of precision. You know that Neeraj is a man of precision. In the meanwhile, I found that he has made a very specific topic. So that helps me focus also. So I have to thank Neeraj also in absentia. So today's talk is highways development in India. This was my last posting in Government of India. It also happens that well before that, about 10 years before Government of India, I was also road secretary in Government of Bihar. So I have experience of state also, experience of center also in the same sector. Now, let me give you a snapshot. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, which you can upload and see it on the screen. So I'll speak very slowly and touch very broad issue. And so that, and you can, as we go along, I would prefer that if you have any questions, any queries, any observations, just raise your hand, and after President allows you, just speak up and then we keep on chatting. What is the highway? Or highway is a generic terms. So the total road network in the country, I'll give you a snapshot of road network. If you have, and the road network comprises different kinds of roads, village roads, district roads, state roads, national highways. So if I stack one on top of the other, at the bottom village roads and rural roads, on top of that district roads, on top of that state roads, and on top of that at the very peak national highways. So out of total 64 lakh kilometer of road network, the national highways accounts for only 46 lakh kilometers, which is about 2.3% of the total road network in the country. Yet, this 2.3% of the national highways carries about 40% of the traffic. They are the showpiece projects. So when we talk about, at least in this presentation, we will be talking about national highways. So I have used the term national highways without defining it. You might ask me, what is national highways? National highways are those highways, those road network, which are defined as national highways in the National Highway Act of 1956. There was an Central Act of National Highway Act 1956, and it defined national highways. What happened was that with the act, there was also a big schedule of about 300 roads, and it said that all the roads which figure in the schedule, they are declared as national highways. So national highways are, which are defined as national highways. That is the definition of national highways. It also said that union government will have the power to also declare any road network as national highway. So that is how the length of national highways has grown up. When I was there in the ministry, the total length of national highways was less than 90,000 kilometers. Today it is 1.46 lakh kilometers. So it is a 60% growth in the last 12, 13 years, which is very impressive growth. More important than that, the quality of national highways has increased vastly. For example, when I was there, I remember that we were struggling that all the national highways should be at least 2 lanes. At least 2 lanes, otherwise we should rename them, we should not name them as national highways. It is quite an embarrassing thing for us to call some stretch as a national highway, which is single lane or intermediate lane. So that was about 1/3 of the total length was less than 2 lanes. Today, when the total network has gone up by 60%, the total percentage of those national highways which are less than 2 lane is only 10%. So we are very happy that, I think the entire country is very happy that national highway has done so well. Now, you are also aware that among all infrastructure sectors, compare it with port or power or railways or water supply, national highway has a unique distinction. You connect point A to B, the economic progress starts flowing in terms of farmers' access to the market or access to educational institutions, access to medical facilities. Take any other infrastructure sector, for example, power plant. You construct a power plant of 500 megawatt, nothing happens. You need 10 other things to do. From power plant, you have to have a grid evacuation by a grid. Then at least 2 step-down transformers to come down to 11 kV. High voltage grid transmission to 132 to 33 to 11 kV. And then distribution network, there has to be within consumer's premises, there has to be wiring. So just setting up a power plant is not enough. Does not mitigate your power shortage. Here in the road network, connect A to B and immediately starts flowing. In fact, people are so desperate, people are so impatient that once they know that your road network is ready and you are waiting for some VIP to inaugurate it, they can't wait. They start driving their vehicles. So that is we have seen that most often bridge would be ready, and by some excuse, the engineers wait for some VIP to come in and inaugurate. But people are very smart. People get to know that this is ready, and you are just waiting for someone. They don't, whether they will come with the whole horde of people will come and they will make your life miserable and they will inaugurate it themselves. So that is the difference between highway and other infrastructure sectors. Highway starts taking place. Now, I spoke about 1956 National Highway Act. What that act does is, first of all, it defines that national highways are union government assets. It also gives a chapter about land acquisition. So the KALA, Competent Authority for Land Acquisition, is notified by the central government. I'll come to that later. Then after notification, the other chapter is about, that is very significant, the entrustment. The government of India can entrust certain stretch of national highways to either state government or to any other entity for management, development, or maintenance. So what happened in the initial years of national highways, till 80s and 90s also, that most of these stretches were entrusted to concerned state governments, in whose geographical boundaries that national highway fell. So the asset was owned by the union government, but the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways was not geared for execution of projects. And for state governments, it was a big support, financial support, because since the owner was union government, so once and every state government, state PWD, has a national highway wing. So you'll find chief engineer national highways. So all the state governments have a national highway wing. All the state governments PWD has a chief engineer, engineer-in-chief, called National Highway, Chief Engineer National Highways, or some designation. And they have divisions of national highways. And those are very coveted divisions because that is the only place where some money flows for the central government. But I'm talking of 1990s. Then national highways was done in a very haphazard manner. Small stretches was executed as some kind of a widening or strengthening of the road network, which fell within that state government jurisdiction. And that was entrusted to the state government. Central government will send money for that. And the annual plan will be prepared. That annual plan will be approved of the state government. And for those networks, some maybe few hundred crores will come to the state, depending on the availability of the funds with Government of India and also the capacity of state government to absorb. So that the kind of order of the funds which flew to a state government like Bihar was maybe 200 crores a year or 300 crores a year, not more than that. So as a result, what they did was they will take small stretches, and the mode of execution contracting was classical item rate contract. Contractors were small, the stretches were small, and they were all item rate contracts, so we call BOQ contracts, bill of quantity contracts. And this was these kind of contractings were British era legacy. This kind of contract is a legacy of British era. All the PWD codes belong to 19th century. So this was the way of development, and there was no big thinking. Now, you compare it with the US, for example, and is coincidentally, in President Eisenhower time, they also had a Expressway Act, Interstate Expressway Act, that also came in 1956. But the difference between that act and this act was, our act and their act is, their act was of 1956, was a big plan of interstate development, and they set up a federal structure for interstate development. So all these I-95s or I-91 you see, they followed President Eisenhower's aid for interstate bill, something like that. So that was and that is also of 1956. Our 1956 Act only gave a legal definition that this is national highways, and this gave power of entrustment also. This defined ownership and defined steps for land acquisition. But they had a big $25 billion plan. So I believe that 1956 US and maybe that auto bans of Europe, etc., all these must have come about 50s or 60s. Before 50s also, there was no planned development in US. But in our case, it had to wait maybe 40, 50 years. Now you might have heard of National Highway Authority of India. Virdi sir told me that, introduced that I was also chairman of NHAI. You have heard of that. This is a very ubiquitous organization. So you might be thinking, what is the NHAI? So that is the first time when the government started thinking of planned development of corridors, big corridors, and NHI Act came in 1988. So 56 we had NH Act and NHI Act came in 1988. NHI was made functional in 1995. It takes time when organization may be enacted. The act was passed by the parliament, but by the time everyone is in place and the members and chairman are there, it took some years. So 1995, NHI was made functional. Then first time big ticket planning was done in the time of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, PM Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he thought of golden quadrilateral. And golden quadrilateral were entrusted to NHAI. That started in sometime in 2000, year 2000. To start with, it was 4-lane. At some places, it was also 2 lanes. Later on, when it was completed, then we thought of making 6 lanes. It all depends on there is a trigger traffic. At certain traffic, you have to have 4 lanes, you have to have 6 lanes. But 4-lane long networks, long corridors, was first thought of as a golden quadrilateral of connecting 4 metros as in the shape of a quadrilateral. Thereafter came east-west corridor and north-south corridor. North-south corridor was starting from Kanyakumari to Srinagar. And east-west was, I think, from Silchar to Porbandar. So these two diagonals, complete networks, were first thought of in phase 1 and phase 2. Along with that, there was a phase 3 and phase 4 and phase 4, 5 and phase 6, everything. Phase 3 was. So by the time I came in, these two were, first was golden quadrilateral was about to be completed. There was some stretches left in corridors, east-west and north-south corridors. Phase 3 of 20,000 kilometers was other networks, other corridors, long corridors. And at that time, 2011, 2012, or 2013, when I was there in the ministry, PPP, there was a big plan of PP, public-private partnership. And I think, almost all the sectors it was thought of. In road network, it took off because it was easy to construct. Structuring a PPP project in road network is easy to conceptualize, visualize. You have a model concession contract and the investor invests his money. The investment might comprise of debt and equity. And after the road is completed, he starts tolling for the concession period. And at the end of the concession period, he hands over the project to NHI. So that is the structure of. So it was very easy to visualize, but difficult to execute. Somehow it so happened that in my time, there was a lot of euphoria about PPP projects. And the economists use term irrational exuberance. There was also some kind of irrational exuberance, both by investors, both by the corporates, and also by lenders. And what happened because of that is this kind of double exuberance was that perhaps due diligence was lacking. The bankers were very lax in opening their purse strings. And our impression was, this was our impression. I don't have any proof that so-called equity also of the investor was funded by bank debt. So-called equity also, all that equity was also funded by the bank debts. So bank debt was actually highly gold-plated, and compared to our project cost, the financing cost was higher, much higher. And because everyone thought that the going will be good. But later on we found, and by that time I had retired, later on that found that this has started unraveling, and there was double distress. Corporate balance sheet was also under distress, and that led to lenders distress. And this happened across sectors, not only in power sector, not only road sector, power sector. Power sector faced this kind of distress, double distress. So this was a phase of euphoria to distress. And banks, what as usual they do, is completely tightened their purse strings. So all kind of lending stopped. But it is not as if that NHA is blameless. Mr. Suri, he has asked me what is the length of the expressways. Now, expressways are a subset of national highways, and expressways feature is that they are totally access controlled. Our national highways, because of their historical regions, they have a lot of common traffic. They have a lot of multiplicity of traffic. For example, pedestrians are also there, and the Bulacot is also there. Tonga is also there. Bicycles, two-wheelers, and four-wheelers, everything. You have road crossings. So the traditional way of habitation was, if you pass through some highways in Bihar, for example, or maybe other places also, you'll find children playing on the ground, and the ladies, women splitting their papad and achar, pickles on the road network, national highways to dry. So that kind of coexistence was there. Now expressways is a specific subset of highways which are completely access controlled. There is no cross traffic. That is the feature of expressways. So if you mean that expressway, then I'm making a guess. It will not be more than 5,000 kilometers. Out of total 1.46 lakh kilometers. Whereas in the US, the whole concept of interstate was freeways. It has to be completely signal free network from east coast to west coast or north to south. That kind of expressways was their plan. But there are problems in that, and I'll come to that later. So therefore, expressways, if sir, your question is about those expressways which are completely access controlled, for example, Yamuna Expressway or that kind of expressway, or Noida Greater Noida Expressway, for example. Those who live in Noida, NCR, they are aware of Noida Greater Noida Expressway. Keshav is aware. So those expressways are completely access controlled. There is no cross traffic. The only exit is through the ramp or underpasses or overpasses. So there are great separators. So that is, if you mean in that sense, that length will not be more than 5,000 kilometers. Now, expressways are not always constructed by NHAI. I find that there are many expressways constructed by
Say 5 years from now, Mr. Upadhyay, 5
Sir.
years or 10 years from now, what should be the length of the expressways? Because that is what.
Okay, I can try that. I can try that.
It is a pleasure driving on an expressway, not on a highway when you find so many encroachments and going through so many cities, you know.
Yes. I can try that. And there is genuine difficulty. I'll come to that also. My thought is that 5 years from now, expressways cannot go beyond 10,000 kilometers. Why? These are completely greenfield. Now, you have to realize the pressure of population on our land. And if I compare it with, say, America, we are 4 times their population. They are 1/4 of our population. They are about 350 kilometers. We are 350 million. We are 1,400 million people. So 1/4 of population they have, and their landmass is 3 times our landmass. So therefore, the population relative pressure on the land is 12 times higher in India. So that is one feature. The second feature is that emotional attachment to our farmers with the land is very different from those of American farmers or European farmers. Yeah, for America, farming is industry now. Only 2% people depend upon farming. All the farming is a large-scale farming, highly mechanized and highly industrial. हमारे यहाँ तो whatever is there, it's that is the fallback. So you might have seen 2 Bigha Zameen, and the man dies for land. Bimal Roy's film 2 Bigha Zameen belongs to that date, and that indebtedness, rural indebtedness, all those things. So it may not be still there, but I think the average land holding size, the population dependent on land. In our case, it is 60%. 60% of the people in different ways are dependent upon the land. They have no worthwhile employment. They might prefer to go for an organized employment, but Virdi might be aware in his state, Punjab. I don't know whether he has his pin still there. They have nothing educated young people. They don't want to work in farming, but they are dependent on that. That is their only source of survival. So in our case, 60% people are dependent on land. In America's case, it is just 2%. Then pressure on land is 12 times more than America. If you compare it with Russia and China and Canada or global average, it will be the same. It will be similar kind of ratio. Our pressure on of population on the land will be many multiples of global average or the big countries average. So therefore, it is not fair to compare, because in 1956 they planned freeways, and they had this luxury of they called it eminent domain, by which you have the power to take the land.
Mr. Upadhyay, I'm
Yes, sir.
Sarabjit Singh.
Hmm.
Very
Sir.
nice talk, very nice hearing you. And very informative. I have one question about ESG. Nowadays, environment, social governance is a big thing. And the social impact of building these expressways and highways. How do you take care of that? I believe that's a thing. And about environmental sustainability. And what
fact,
is your...
I'm already, my time is up. I wanted to talk to that all. And most important, my interest is on dispute resolution. As far as social impact analysis is concerned, in fact, when I was there and in the UPA government, it was still UPA government, you might recall those days that UP had been captured by, and I don't say it in a political sense, UP had been captured by NGO type of. There was an institution called National Advisory Council, NAC. It was extra constitutional, no mention in constitution anywhere, but it was supra cabinet. National Advisory Council was headed by was UPA chairperson, and it had its member all kinds of NGOs who were famous for obstructing development in the name of social justice or something like that. Now, even some ministries, for example, and I'll talk about Rural Development Ministry, which was for land acquisition, and a Tribal Affairs Ministry, and I should mention the name also, because that will help you place the context. I remember he was in Tribal Affairs, and in some capacity he was in charge of land acquisition. Now he reformed the Land Acquisition Act and made it so difficult that it was impossible to acquire any land. And that was their way of showing that we are pro-poor, pro-farmer. So there was a Land Acquisition Reforms Act, in which the compensation was enhanced twice or 4 times. And the process was, you start with a social impact analysis. The process, very first step is a social impact analysis, which is posted on website. You invite objections. Before that, you cannot issue any notification. So social impact analysis, environment impact, and they had some committee of wise people, 3 or 4 wise people. PM has to take their approval. Now, yes, I can plan this project. Yes, we can go ahead with that. And thereafter, you issue a notification for this. Then what he did was, every village which fell in the stretch, we had to call a meeting of Gram Sabha and take their consent of 80% or 90% people that there is no traditional dweller on that stretch, which is affected by this network. So I had my job as a secretary was also to meet those people. For example, my official capacity, I met and telling that, look, sir, national highways are along my alignment. Most of the stretch is there. This is not passing through any tribal forest. If there is a forest area, then I can think of traditional dwellers. Traditional dwellers are those Adivasis of tribal people whose generally livelihood was based on the forest produce. So to protect their rights, we had to take meeting of the consent of Gram Sabha everywhere. I said, at least for linear projects, where you know that there is no forest area, there is no forest, please dispense with the requirement of condition of this Gram Sabha. So I had to convince them. Then environment clearance, for example. Then that was proving very difficult. Then I organized an interministerial meeting headed by finance minister, who called environment minister, my minister. It turned out to be very, very nasty. Then I said, nothing is happening. Let us go to PM. So PM ke यहाँ भी मैं गया, वहाँ भी meeting एक बुलाई. Again, the same situation. And I don't want to say anything more than that, because then I have to say something of what transpired there. But that was a very difficult part. You can overdo things like that. We might have a bona fide interest of villagers, tribal people, sustained development. But somewhere you have to also go ahead with the development. So that kind of balance is very difficult. Either you shut down everything. Either you shut down all development and then have a sustained development and complete purity in everything. And farmers' right is protected and no farmers' land is taken. So I faced that situation also. Certain states were there where officially or whatever they had banned. And I can mention 2 states, Kerala and West Bengal. Kerala, for example, completely banned land acquisition for 2 years. West Bengal also not officially banned, but de facto it was banned. So most states, the CM would have the courtesy of giving me audience. Bengal was one state where I had a very interesting experience. Interesting what kind of situation we face and what kind of struggle we have to go through to get government, not my personal work. So I traveled down there is a NH34 there, starting from Bagdogra to Calcutta. This is the main artery of national highway in Bengal. Main artery starting from Bagdogra to Calcutta. And it was 2 lane, so we wanted to make it 4 lane, which needed a land acquisition on both sides. It passes through dense habitation, and it needed a CM's personal interest. So on the way, this was 500 kilometers or 600 kilometers. On the way, there were 2 districts. I also stopped there, had a meeting with them, with the district magistrates. Then I reached Calcutta, and then I met Chief Secretary. मैंने कहा कि बताओ, then I told him, this is the NH is the lifeline. NH34 is lifeline for West Bengal. It's also the lifeline for the country because it goes through the chicken snake. And that is the only network from Bengal for access to Northeast. So this is such a vital network. You are still living with 2 lane. And how long you can survive? You have to make it 4 lane. So कहा कि देखो सर हम कुछ करते हैं. There was a euphoria also about PPP. Now, public-private partnership was very successful in the road sector because of the nature of the sector. I think it was tried in railways, everywhere it was tried, but you have to structure each project has to be structured in a different way. You can't have a model concession agreement. But in roads, it was possible to have a model concession agreement. Now, PPP, the basic difference between PPP and public funded projects is that of risk sharing. Now, in public funded projects, entire financing risk is the public sector, entire traffic risk, revenue risk is the public sector. You build a road, you pay to the contractor, tell bye-bye, he gives you some defect liability period. He goes home, then you pay off, road is yours, you toll it. Now traffic risk is yours. So in PPP, which was and PPP also has a different modes. BOT toll, build, operate, and transfer toll, bracket toll. So the investor builds it, operates it. Operates it means that he operates the toll plazas. He also does periodic overlay. The contract provides for 5-yearly overlays and transfers back it to the owner. And what was the bidding parameter? The concession period was fixed, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever. Toll rate is decided by the government. It is all pre-announced. Toll rate under the NH Act is a sovereign function. So they decide, they notify toll rates everywhere. And it is also mentioned in the course of the 25 years, every year it will go up by this percentage. So he knows the toll rates, he knows the concession period. Then he bids on the basis of what is called viability gap funding, VGF. What is the minimum VGF bidder is able to offer? So in the days of that euphoria, we found that many projects went on high premiums. Instead of viability gap funding, they were willing to pay to the government, at least in the first bid. So we were very happy that we were getting a lot of money by bidding on PPP basis, BOT toll. And there was a very ambitious target of 8,000 kilometers in PPP mode. So I'm very happy to say that entire 8,000, I was able to achieve that. And this was entirely on BOT toll basis. But not all good things last forever. So this has to unravel, and there were problems, there were fundamental problems. One problem was of land acquisition. For example, what we did was, there is a requirement in the concession agreement that appointed day plus 180 days, you have to hand over all the land or 80% of the land. So supposing I have the 55% land already available, because it is our own highway, which is our own network. For widening, you might be needing somewhere. For improving the geometry, you might need some fresh land. Otherwise, the entire ROW is available, right of way is available. So therefore, 55, 60%, 70% was available. For the rest, the process had been initiated. For example, first step is notification under section 3 capital A, the intent to acquire, then 3B, 3C, 3D. So that was already done. Now you hope that by the time the bid comes in, the tender comes in, and by the time your tender committee decides, you have a lead time of about 1 year. So 1 year should be enough. By the time you award the project, it's already 1 year is passed, and you hope that 60% will become 100%. That hope was belied because of those reasons I mentioned to you, because of difficulties with land acquisition. So when the land was given to the concessionaire, the concession agreement was signed, an appointed day was given, there was a lapse on the part of NHAI, or call it employer, in handing over their ROW. This happened across the board in many cases. Now, the investors, they are very smart in keeping all their documents and correspondence sequence-wise. We are very, very poor. The moment an officer is transferred, all memory is gone. In our case, what happens is that if the man at the project site is transferred, then we generally say कि भाई वो तो चला गया, उसी को पता होगा. Whereas the big companies like L&T and Gammas, for them, it is a road building is not a contract. It's a legal matter. It is not a road construction. It is a contract. So for them, it is a legal matter. Their legal cell becomes active from the day one. The day project is awarded to them, their legal cell becomes active. All the correspondence with Nathi and everything and this thing, chronology is completely there. Whenever the project is ready, whenever they wish to raise claims, they will raise claims. And they can say कि हमने आपको ये letter लिखा, it was never acknowledged. Then we wrote this reminder, gave you this reminder. It was never acknowledged. That is across the board. Not only in highways, it's railways, everywhere. Every government sector, nothing happens. We don't move. the contract management at the site, and whenever an issue is raised, it is always raised up. Even if he has got the powers to do it, he will raise it up to headquarters. So all this background, all this situation led to huge number of disputes and arbitration cases. I have not seen a single project of road construction, large-scale project, which has not ended up in disputes. There are good contractors who classically, traditionally believe in closing the contract and just moving on with life. But there are professional contractors who take this as the dispute itself as their economic model. There are many contractors, for them it's a business. The business model is raise claims, get some big awards. Now, in arbitration tribunals, your experience may not match with our sector. In arbitration tribunal, there is not a single, the NHI has faced hundreds of cases. There is not a single case where their argument was accepted. Not a single case. And in all cases, the contractor's argument was accepted. The awards were very, very huge. Very huge. Why the awards very huge? The largest component is prolongation related claims. Prolongation in our government system, in our notion, we take it delay is a part of life. We never take it as a tangible kind of loss. It is a notional. For them, it is the money. For in our case, something is to be replied in 1 month, we do it in 6 months. For in our case, it is a normal thing. But in their case, that becomes a claim. So that kind of mismatch was always there in their thinking, and that never goes away. Unfortunately. So what happened was that prolongation related claims had 2 or 3 components. One was idling of machinery. By machinery mein, if something is remaining idle, he will prove that he has lost in rental, he has lost in secure watch and ward, he has lost in running the machine, he has all this. Then overheads. Overheads the manpower, because he has set up, he claims that all his engineers were there, so therefore the claim is this much. Then lost profit. He is overstaying, so he has lost profit, opportunity lost. So lost profit, 3 headings, lost profit, and in all arbitration tribunals cases, 80 cases, where I find that prolongation related claims will have 3 components: lost profit, then idling of machinery, and then overheads. And this will be half of the claim. Uske baad aayega change of scope and this thing, that thing. So that will be remaining half, or maybe less than half. But his claims, major part of the claim will be soft claims, which can't be proved. With his books of account, he will give an audited account, and therefore you are faced with. So, hua kya ki by the time I had retired, and NHI contacted me in different. So hua kya ki the government was kind of knew the problem, but there is also a bigger problem of the sacrosanct notion about arbitration tribunal. All the concession agreements or contract agreements of large-scale projects have a chapter of dispute resolution, big chapter, and this goes in different steps, starting with at the local level, at the site level, facilitated by authorities engineer or independent engineer. I'll explain these terms. If it is a cash-funded project, EPC project, it is called authorities engineer. If it is a PPP project, then the nomenclature changes to independent engineer, and his cost is shared by 50-50 by both NHI and the private party. So the moment it becomes a PPP project, private investment, then the engineer is called independent engineer, and he has got certain legal powers, certain legal status. So for example, he can facilitate any local level dispute by calling the contractor's representative and the project director. And he might say, And that opinion should be generally accepted as per the concession agreement. But obviously, as you can imagine, the project director straight away says no, or we have to take the approval of higher authorities. In many cases, project director also accepts, yes, he needs to be compensated. There is no final resolution. There is no final resolution at that stage. The moment it is raised up to higher levels, it goes to NHI headquarters, to member level, which may not be necessary because of delegation of powers, but it lies stuck up somewhere. You can imagine in your situation where, so this is the way of our contract management, nothing moved. And the moment he goes to the arbitration tribunal, he will cite the contract, the concession agreement, where it is said that independent engineer's determination, which will be after talking to both the parties, has to be accepted. So therefore, judicial tribunals accept that. They award it. Okay. So, and the prolongation related claims, so exactly, they quote some kind of Hudson formula somewhere. Hudson formula is perhaps in civil contracts, is a French international contract. So from there, they quote ki aise aise hona chahiye. If there is a prolongation for 2-3 years, which is very normal, the claim could be humongous. But my impression is that if a 3 years project is delayed by another 2-3 years, which is not very unusual, 1,000 crores project will raise claims of about more than 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores. And you will not be surprised if the award would be 1,000 crores. Now, the government was in a bind because on the one hand, there is an international notion that you have to give sanctity to the award of arbitration tribunal. The award is a kind of executable degree. And when you challenge it in the higher forums, in High Court or Supreme Court, it is not taken as it is the case law. The jurisprudence is that challenge before High Court under Section 34 of AT Act is not supposed to be treated as appeal. It is not appeal. The last forum for evidence and facts is arbitration tribunal. And the Act also mentions that the challenge is of a very limited scope. The whole jurisprudence has developed in arbitration that the challenge before the High Court under Section 34 of AT Act is can be on a very limited scope of fraud against public policy, or if the award is, or if there is a basic illegality, or if it is unconscionable to the judge. Only in those cases the High Court can look into that. But otherwise, High Court would never say कि आपके against 500 crore का award है, so we think that 200 crore is sufficient. That never happens. In no case it happens that higher courts will reduce the amount of award against the authority. No case. Because that is the law. The law is that कि या तो it is illegal or it is legal. And the moment it is apparent from the tribunal's award that it was well argued, both parties were heard, and they were given adequate opportunities, then their decision is set aside. There is also a case law that if a contract is drafted by one party, and if any clause is amenable to two interpretations, then that interpretation will be taken, which is against the drafting party. Now, all the contracts are drafted by the authorities. In railways, railway drafted the model contract. In our case, we drafted. So therefore, agar kisi clause mein two interpretation possible hai, one in your favor, one in the contractor's favor, the one against in the contractor's favor will be taken as the law. So that is the law. And in all the forums of international conferences, all conferences, they started saying that your government you are very funny. How can we trust the Indian government where there is no finality to AT award? So this kind of pressure was there. On the one hand, this kind of pressure was there. On the other hand, the awards were humongous, and people started realizing that had there been any mechanism of settling it across the table, something you could have settled for 50 crores, you end up paying 500 crores as a legal award. So problem ये है in government sector, we are all safety conscious, we are all risk averse. Many of us who are honest, their honesty is not doing anything. What happened was that as the government was running around like headless chicken, various kind of mechanisms were tried. And fortunately, there was one chairman who had this vision of that, okay, this kind of thing is not sustainable. Everyone mechanically, once you lose an award, then someone advises you that, okay, you file an appeal. Knowing very well that it is not called appeal, it is a challenge in High Court. It is not an appeal and zero chances of success. But since he's your legal counsel, he will advise that you have a arguable point. Your legal section, your finance would say that it has not been argued properly. Then you lose in High Court also, single bench, double bench. Then your own people will advise you to ask who is responsible for this kind of failure. File in Supreme Court. So ये चलता रहता है. This has become a kind of mechanical reflex action. And by this effort, about 5 years, 10 years were lost because our courts are so inefficient. The moment you threaten the person कि भाई मैं तो appeal जा रहा हूँ, तो he knows कि everyone knows, even the authorities know. But अगर finally Supreme Court से हारेंगे, it becomes a law. You have to give it. There are many cases where after wasting good money over bad money, and legal fees, lawyers' fees and everything, and delays, you end up paying the amount and all the interest and all the legal fees. Finally, you pay that. So what happened was that in many kinds of amicable settlement was tried. I was part of that process also. One which is proving very successful right now is taken from Act itself. The Arbitration Tribunal Act itself, there is a whole chapter of conciliation. In fact, there are two places. The AT itself can encourage parties to amicably settle it. AT itself. No AT does it. No AT does that. So AT itself can encourage parties. That is the one section of Section 30. And there is a separate chapter of conciliation. The legal theory behind conciliation is that parties to a suit are masters of their suit. They can come to any agreement, settlement at any stage of the proceedings, whether pending before the courts or finally decided by the Supreme Court. Then the two parties can come to some kind of agreement, one party can waive something. So that is the theory of legal theory, a concept of conciliation. And the Act also provides authentication. So if the conciliator authenticates, that becomes mutually binding on the parties. So one chairman discovered that कि भाई ये तो है. So it has so happened that the amount of settlement is about 1/3, 1/4 of the claimed amount or even awarded amount. So that is the concept of, and they call it Conciliation Committee of Independent Experts. I'm part of that. So this is happening now. And you'll be happy to know, and incidentally, I should tell you that DFCCIL, Dedicated Freight Corridors, who have similar kind of projects, they have started facing the same situation, where all tribunal AT cases, they lose and lose it big. And exactly similar situation. So they heard of this thing, NHI success. So they contacted us and they have exactly adopted the same committees and with the same SOPs. So I'm part of that also.
Mr. Upadhyay, may I say something?
Sir.
You see, this what I can hear from you.
Yeah.
Is all sorts of problems because of, I think, not enough planning before starting boarding the work. See what the Chinese do. You see what the Chinese do.
Yes, sir.
Is suppose a railway line has to be built. They plan. They have about 1,500 people.
1,500
whose only job, persons in an institute, whose only job is to plan out in detail how the line will be built. They will work out to detail where the signal will come, where everything is to that much detail it is worked out. Then they also then work out a schedule each day what is to be done. Then they have a project team. The project team has nothing to do to just take these plans and implement because everything has been already worked out.
Okay.
And then they have another team, which is a materials team. The material team, because it is so much detail, it has been planned in so much detail, they know exactly what material will be needed on site on what day. And their job is to make sure that that material is there on site. And then there is a penalty if you delay. There is a and you get if you do it earlier, then you get a reward. And the project team is not changed until the end of the project.
Okay, right. That's a big difference, sir.
Huh? So what I can see is that a lot of the problem we have is I don't think we spend enough time in planning it out in detail.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We start the work. We don't know exactly what is to be on day X. It will be what, day X plus 2, what it will be what, and what resources will be required to make sure it carries on along to the plan. And cost overruns shouldn't be there. So Chinese are able to build more or less to cost. So what do you say? Why can't we adopt something similar?
I don't know. I have no answer. Why can't we why can't we keep people for 10 years or 12 years in one job? But I can tell you something more about the problems we face. For example, आपका DPR, for example. Now, that will require that DPR, the engineer himself covers all the 300 kilometers or 100-kilometer stretch, whatever is the stretch of the project, along with the technical team who has made the DPR. And each site he stops, each yard meter he stops. Still, there might be some uncertainties. For example, if there is a hill cutting, for example. Now, unless the contractor starts cutting it, he won't know what kind of difficulties he's going to encounter.
Quite right.
Right. So that those uncertainties are there in large size construction contracts. But in practice, all the so-called DPRs here are not detailed project reports. They might be made made up in drawing room with some kind of spot verifications off and on. But on top of that DPR, I don't think that at the stage of DPR, the engineer or employer's representative covers each stretch, each kilometer, each meter, because every meter has to be completely measured and what kind of situation is there. Now, when the contractor comes on site, our model agreements always have this disclaimer. Whatever schedules we have, we give you about the bridge locations, bridge dimension, etc., are all tentative. NHAI is not liable for accuracy of this data. And the bidder is supposed to verify it for himself about the accuracy. Now, this never washes with the arbitration tribunal because everyone knows that verifying a DPR is a very costly job. When the person bids, he takes the DPR as the basis. He does not. In practice, he does not. And we try to take shelter of the disclaimer. That disclaimer doesn't work because every contract has this disclaimer. Every contract has this disclaimer. So ये disclaimer में problem है क्या कि because DPRs are not perfect, not 100% accurate. They might be 50% inaccurate. In practice, many DPRs of complex road projects or construction projects in hilly areas, you might find that they're completely off. The site condition is very different from DPR details. Now, what do you do? What do you do? Now, with the conciliation committees for so many years, now my experiences of dealing with all the officers is that certain officers, and they might carry very impressive designations. Chief General Manager, for example, is just below member. Is very so. There are certain chief CGMs are very, very commercial oriented, and they're able to take decisions. They are able to have a broader vision that we don't settle this kind of lawsuit there. On the other hand, there are also certain CGMs, chief general managers, who are nothing better than babus. They're clerical, their mind is not grown beyond that. And I must say that TFCCIL may, at least in headquarters, I met all the officers, including the CMD, Mr. Jan, and all his officers. In headquarters, they are very enlightened people, I must say that. But in field, I have some disappointment because we had to do a lot of convincing. This is not the way to approach. Now, in the law, in the contract agreement, there is a clause called change of law or political force majeure. Any kind of direction by any authority, any court, anyone, which the contractor cannot control, becomes employer responsibility. Law is very clear. अगर मान लो कि PM ने कह दिया कि आपको 5 दिन बंद रखना है, that becomes a claim. Where there is a claim, it becomes employer's responsibility. You can't say go to the DM. DM हुआ some high court judgment, some Supreme Court judgment banning sand mining in that area. So this makes a big change, because sand mining was the main source of revenue. If the sand mining is banned because of by Supreme Court, because of their enthusiasm for green-mindedness, now the claim is against the employer, NHI. Now NHI cannot say by Supreme Court judgment is a law. But law hai, but it's a change of law. It's change of law. We cannot control it. So you are the authority, you are the employer. So all this, the contract is very clear on that. Any strike, any kind of toll stoppage by any VIP or any this thing, law and order problem, some truckers agitation, every claim on count of those things are the claim is against always the NHI. There is also a state support agreement in each contract, in PPP contract, state support agreement, where the state government undertakes that will provide all support, facilitate this. For example, law and order, land acquisition, everything, blah, blah, blah. In this project, wherever there is any problem relating to the state government, we will support it. Now, NHI tries to get away by saying, "Bhai, state government se claim karo." But the law is very clear. The contract is very clear. It is all against the NHI. The claim is against the NHI. Follow state transport buses. They decide they will go free. Now it is not possible for the toll operator to stop state transport buses if there is whether it is a legal order or illegal order. But toll laws on that account, or DM says कि local traffic को आपको allow करना है. Local traffic has to be allowed. So therefore, all the claims, all these things, and he has these documents already tagged in proper file chronologically. Now NHI would have no answer, because he would say that मैंने उसी समय आपको बोल दिया था, मैंने लिखा था ये letter, and you didn't reply. So their contract is very clear, and the arbitration tribunals are very clear in their mind. And even in the fundamental law of contract is also very clear that if contractor suffers a genuine loss beyond his control, then he has to be compensated. That is the fundamental law. FIDIC contracts है जो पेरिस का कोई international body है. FIDIC contracts, international model contracting. Now railways mechanical is in a very lucky position. I have seen mechanical contracts of some railways where it was said that railway will not be held liable for any lapse on their part, and GM's order will be final. Now, this kind of thing will not go in a large-scale civil contracts, construction contracts. And sir, I'll take you back to certain years, some years ago, about power sector. Whether railways or Coal India or anyone, they were not aware of contracting. कि someone can contract with the railways. कि भाई अगर आप transport नहीं करेंगे तो you'll pay me for this much. That kind of thing was not known. Fuel supply agreement. For example, Coal India was never bound down by any fuel supply agreement. आप दे नहीं दे, poor quality, bad quality. No. Then there was PPP was not heard of. PPA, Power Purchase Agreement, PPA was not heard of. कि NTPC will sign a PPA with the Bihar State Electricity Board, that if you buy power from us, you don't pay, then you have to pay me this penalty. It was not there. And worst of it was, and you might have all faced it, a government department, government agency, bribing another government agency or creating institution of bribing to get their genuine work done. For example, NTPC has a mounting bills over all ACBs. I'm talking about those days, ACBs. Now they will have a institution of recovery agent. They will hire a recovery agent whose job will be to go to Bijli Board office, show his face and meet up people and try to get whatever money he could get. Now this ACB will say कि भाई state government से budget नहीं pass हुआ है, budget होगा कुछ दे देंगे, some ad hoc money you pay. The dues are about 500 crores, you pay him 50 crores check. So that kind of, everyone was belong to the government, whether state government or central government. So in this regime, when the independent power producers came, firstly, this name or this term was not known to us. Independent power producers who generate, and they are independently owned, they are owned by private companies. They generate power, they send it to the grid, and they expect to tie it down with a power purchase agreement. Someone will have to sign a power purchase agreement so that entire power is evacuated by some entity. And they will have a clause of deemed power. I mean, I'm able to generate power, but you are not able to buy it. So deemed power bhi aapko pay karna padega. Then he will sign a fuel supply agreement with the coal company. Then he will supply a transport agreement with the railway company. So all these were unknown, unheard of, unaware, but they all signed it. So Railways first time signed a transport agreement, a fuel transport agreement, or Coal India first time signed a fuel supply agreement, or SEB signed power purchase agreement. When these private companies came, companies like Enron is a bad name now, but companies like Enron, Cogentrix, AES, they were all international companies. They made them sign the contracts.
If I may intervene, we have gone beyond the normal time of our talk.
I'm sorry about that.
So if we can conclude the talk, and if there are any specific questions, we can wait for them.
My talk is mostly concluded because, first of all, the PPP mode of BOT toll has become outdated now because of the problems of financing. Now, what PPP has is a broader term. There are different modes available now. One is annuity. So in annuity that is also a PPP model where the builder, the investor builds the project, and the tolling is done by the NHI. So therefore, the entire revenue risk comes from the NHI. So revenue risk is he's immune from revenue risk. So the whole game is risk sharing. There is also what we call modified annuity. So now it is very common now, very popular now. Modified annuity, 40% of the construction cost is paid for by NHI as the construction goes along. And the remaining 60% is paid for by annuities, determined annuities. So that also there's some kind of financing risk is taken by the NHI authorities. So these are the models of alternative models of PPP. Now, instead of BOT toll, which was the preferred model earlier, we all wanted to go for that because we thought that more funds will be coming. Now the preferred mode is BOT annuity, modified annuity scheme, and EPC. The rest is EPC contract, which is publicly funded. Instead of item rate contract, it is EPC contracts. There is some difference in EPC contract. But award is not the only solution. Award is not the only aim. The contract management, day-to-day contract management is very important, in which we are slightly poor. And lastly, in dispute resolution, this is heavily loaded against the authority. And this model where the Act itself, Arbitration Tribunal Act itself, provides a chapter where there can be a conciliation which has a legal binding force. So that has become very important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Upadhyay, once again, and thank you for all the participants who have joined us live.